Mellifont Abbey was established in 1142 by the most radical reformist in Ireland. Archbishop St. Malachy of Armagh and a band of white monks imported a spiritual and architectural revolution from France. The eloquently named Mellifont was the country's first Cistercian monastery. Today, the site seems as if it has been sawn in half. But 850 years ago, it transformed the very character of Irish architecture.
This is how they would have begun building the monastery with it.
Architectural historian Roger Stalley is laying out the site exactly how St. Malachy's ecclesiastical architects would have done.
Ropes and pegs. It's the side of the square to the diagonal. And it sounds complicated, but it's really very simple. And it was the favourite...
Cistercian monk Father Augustine McGregor has agreed to help.
We need it pretty tight. Now we've marked out this rope right across the cloister. That gives us the diagonal across the cloister. We want to see whether this is going to help us lay out the other buildings of the monastery.
Right.
The Cistercians used geometrical ratios to plan their monastery, designing the entire site around a single square cloister.
In the Middle Ages, they preferred not to use tape measures. They avoided tape measures, and instead they used proportions.
Yeah.
And what we're going to see now is whether this length will give us the outer width, whether it's...
Roger is trying to establish if Mellifont has perfect proportions.
But look, we're actually just a little bit short, so it isn't really following exactly how it would have been in a kind of perfectly laid out
Now, would that have
monastery.
happened normally?
Mellifont is unusual, but I think a lot has to do with the site. It's a very awkward site, and so maybe that meant that they had to take a few liberties with...
Make some adjustments.
Yes, to the what might have been the perfect scheme.
St. Malachy introduced an austere Christianity to Ireland, a form which harked back to the days of the early saints of Skellig Michael.
There's a marvellous saying from a monk of the time: everywhere peace, everywhere serenity, and a marvellous freedom from the tumult of the world.
Roger Stalley is following in the footsteps of St. Malachy. He's travelling to France. He's searching for the monastery whose architecture inspired the entire Irish Cistercian movement.
Ah oui, oui. Clairvaux.
Clairvaux was established in 1115 on a site which literally translates as Valley of Bitterness. Its founding saint, Bernard, renamed it Clairvaux, Valley of Light.
Ancien Abbey de Cistercians.
Located 200 kilometers southeast of Paris, ironically today, Clairvaux has become France's highest security prison. The town mayor, Jean-François Leroux, has allowed him unprecedented access to the site.
Jean-François.
Bon voyage.
Today, the high-security modern prison occupies only one corner of the old monastery.
18e siècle.
But the original prison, now abandoned, covered a much larger area.
De 18e siècle.
Ce bâtiment.
And it is in here that Roger believes he may find remnants of the building Mellifont was based upon.
Clairvaux 2, là. Clairvaux 3, du 18e siècle, on le trouve sur ce plan ici. Et Clairvaux 4 occupe également le même bâtiment.
Clairvaux is a tapestry of architectural styles. In 1812, much of Bernard's monastery was demolished when Napoleon's administration rebuilt it as a prison. But 700 years earlier, it housed a religious order of austere purity. The quest for earthly beatitude lay at the foundations of Clairvaux. "Leave your body at the door," wrote St. Bernard.
This is spectacular. Cistercian architecture at its very best.
The simplicity of the Cistercian way of life found its expression in architecture. Purity of form, clear proportions, and fine masonry are characteristics of Cistercian style. Yet why did this order have the power to reform Ireland when so many before it had failed?
The Cistercians brought really a very different form of monasticism. Of course, it was community worship, so a group of monks living very closely together, but in a highly organized way and in a very disciplined way, so that almost every hour of the day was organized. It was a world of absolute silence.
Saint Malachy himself wasn't Cistercian, but he was deeply influenced by Clairvaux's charismatic leader. Saint Bernard was reputed to be one of the greatest spiritual masters of all times.
Malachy came to Clairvaux, and he arrived at Clairvaux probably in the spring of 1140. And here again something really very extraordinary happened, because you have this very grand abbot of Clairvaux, famed throughout Europe, a very outspoken man, and then you get the bishop from Ireland, Malachy, and they seem to hit it off absolutely instantly, almost as it were fell in love with each other, and indeed that's exactly how Bernard phrases it. They became the best of friends.
When St. Malachy returned to Ireland, he brought with him Clairvaux's architect. In Mellifont, he designed a monastery that reflected Cistercian spiritual ideals. Spartan, elegant construction which concentrated on simplicity, harmony, and light. In just a few decades, 33 Cistercian abbeys were erected across Ireland, making Mellifont the most influential church in the 12th century. But it stood on a crossroads. Its construction marked the end of the Celtic Christian monasteries and brought Ireland firmly under the subjection of Rome.